Hello, guys. You hear me, HCC?
How's it going? I'm here.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah, sound great. Thanks for having
Okay,
me on.
me too. Thank you so much for being here, man.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it. So I think you don't need any introduction. Most of the people here, pretty sure they know you well.
They probably watch me too. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best. So you are one of the original gangsters here, man. You're covering this case since pretty much since the beginning.
Yeah.
I remember you at the time. At the time, there were YouTubers like Incognito, of course, the Captain, True
Yeah.
Crime Jesus. Of course, you were there. You were discussing the case during hours, like during the nights. I was watching you guys. That was really awesome. So maybe if you can share something about you, about yourself, without compromising your privacy, for sure, just
Sure.
for my viewers.
Yeah. I work in IT security. I'm a musician. I play in a pop band for as a hired gun guitarist. Um, music's just a huge passion for me. True crime. I've watched Forensic Files for as long as it's been on, basically, and used to fall asleep to it every night until my wife was like, "This keeps giving me nightmares," and now I can't watch it at night anymore. But
You are not the only one, the only one having this issue, man. Sure
yeah,
about that. And musician as a profession or as a parallel activity?
um, I don't know if I'd call it professional. I've played in bands for 20 years, and I have I do mixing and mastering for musicians and myself, and um, I get paid, so I guess that's professional in a
For sure.
sense. But yeah,
That song you put on Twitter this week was awesome, man. Some Pink Floyd, I think you were
yeah.
playing.
Wish you were
That was
here.
really nice, man. Very
Thanks.
well done. Good. And how did you start covering this case, Delphi?
So I live 20 minutes away from Delphi,
Okay.
and I have family that lived in Delphi, lives in small towns all around the area, and I live in Lafayette, just right down the road.
Hmm.
And I remember being at work when I came over the news that two girls were missing. And then the next day, the news broke. And I had a coworker at the time who was also a volunteer firefighter. And I guess word travels fast. And he was like really messed up by some of the details of the crime. He wouldn't even share. He wouldn't share it. He wouldn't tell me anything. But apparently firefighters are very gossipy. Apparently, I don't know, which is fine.
Yeah.
But it blew my mind that something like that shook the police officers so thoroughly. Whenever they would talk about it, they were horrified by this crime. And I started watching, really I just the news or whatever. And then I found on YouTube that people were talking about this case, and specifically Incognito Society. And
Hmm.
then she was like, "Hey," I started going on her channel a little bit, talking with her, and she's like, "You need to make your own channel." I was like, I don't know. And then I
Did
just
you
did.
did you have a channel at that time, or you created the channel to talk about Delphi?
I created the channel. I had a it's called Band Tree. It was for my music for a band I was in at the time.
Okay.
And that's what a lot of people, some people still know me as band because of that account. Um,
Hey, I'm sorry. I have to open the door. Just 1 second.
oh, you're fine.
So
You're fine. I'll fill this space. And so I created a channel, and I was trying to. At the time, I was talking to Jerry McClurkin and Michael Phillips. The Karina McClurkin case had really intrigued me. Jamie Jo Tate, her case had been unsolved. So being an Indiana boy, I came up with the name Hoosier Cold Cases.
What does it mean, Hoosier? I know it's something related to Indiana, but what is exactly the meaning behind that?
I don't know where it comes from, the etymology of it, but it's just Indianas are called Hoosiers, and mostly associated with basketball, really.
Okay.
Our state has had a huge impact on basketball over its history. Not anymore. We suck everywhere, but Larry Bird and you know,
I was expecting to have the answers today, man. Now
you should have sent me the questions beforehand. No.
Yeah, next time we're gonna do it like that.
Cool. I could Google it, but we'll keep it a mystery.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about the case, if you're right with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I may be gonna ask you the same questions I ask every time, because some things are always like turning in my mind, and it's gonna be interesting to have your ideas or your opinions about that. So one thing that is always bothering me, let's say, is the fact that the cell phone of Libby was there at the crime scene. So I asking myself, why didn't the killer throw it to the river or just discarded it? Why do you think he kept the cell phone there? I don't know if that's the crime scene, but at least the location where the bodies were found, it doesn't make sense to me. It's like, oh, he was just stupid or sloppy, or there's something behind that. What's your take about that?
Well, and even intentionally placing it under a shoe, under the back of Libby, is very fascinating. I think he wanted them to be found.
And why do you think the killer would want
because
the cell phone to be found? That's crazy. Maybe you don't have the answer, but if you think about that, what would be like an explanation?
I think he created his masterpiece, or yeah, like I think it was they wanted. I think they wanted that scene to be seen. It's very weird. You know, I think of like an obsession with television or movies when I think about this killer. Extreme fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
It's regardless of what the symbols mean, or if whatever they are,
mm-hmm.
I feel they're very intentional. And then the phone, we now know, was accessed and turned on at 4:33 a.m.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
And there were screams heard at 2 a.m. and the cops are like, we're too busy. Like, what? They don't know the time of death.
Exactly.
And this is just my opinion, but I think they were potentially killed at that 2 a.m. mark. And then it was staged from 2 a.m. to 4:33. The final bit, after they finished it, he turned the phone back on, put it under the body, and got out of there. Like,
and you're right. The crime scene looks like a True Detective or Hannibal show. It's this kind of imaginary, right?
Yeah. You know, I've scoured the TV show Vikings. Season 4 had just come out, or had just finished, sorry, in 2017 on February 1st was the last episode of season 4. And 3 episodes before that, there was a ritual killing in it. Now, he was hung up, tied to a tree, and then stabbed, the ritual killing in that show. It's you have True Detective, which came out in 2013, 2014. Season 1 did.
Yeah.
With the little weird symbol, made out of sticks, hanging from the trees and whatnot.
The horse on the guard.
Yeah. Video game. I've been looking at video games like Alan Wake, where the show Supernatural.
Mm-hmm.
So I was told years ago about the F on the tree in blood, but I was told it resembled the mark of Cain from the show Supernatural, which is a backwards F. And we now know it was maybe or maybe not a forward F. That'll get debated in court, but that show is interesting too, along with Charmed and all those kind of supernatural shows. I think fantasy played a huge part in this due to the symbolism. Like, it doesn't have to be Odinists because they're Odinists.
Mm-hmm.
If it was staged, then it was somebody who knew about that and wanted it to look like that. Like, it's really, really strange. And now we know that they were looking for Odinist related stuff at Ron Logan's house when they searched his.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's crazy, man. Maybe it's not impossible. I had the same thought. Maybe the killer was into that kind of shit, True Detective or something like that. Is
or was just trying. Yeah.
No, go.
I was gonna say, or like maybe they just watched something with that kind of crap in it. Even the Hannibal Lecter TV show, I think, might have been out at that time. He did really elaborate. Yeah. And
that
there were elaborate things. So it's like, if he wanted to make it look like something it wasn't, if the motive was just sex or kidnapping, abduction for rape or something like that, he wanted to make it look like something different to hide the true motive or whatever. Because ritual killings, there hasn't really ever been such a thing, per se, and so it's all very odd. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree. Coming back to your point about the phone ringing at 4:33 a.m. Some people try to make sense of that, saying that maybe the phone went out of reception, that the signal was lost at one point, and then at what point the cell phone retook the signal or the reception. To me, that's really unlikely.
Right.
I don't know, to have some kind of reception, you have at least to move a couple of centimeters your phone to be able to have that reception back. I don't know. And the phone not having any signal from 11 hours is really unlikely to me.
That's
To think that it's something related to the phone being out of the reception area, I don't know what's your thinking about it.
So it is spotty out there. For that long a time, though, like, they have they're gonna find out precisely what happened. There's like a database in the phone that tracks every little thing. Knowledge C is what it's called. I think I'm getting that right. I could look it up real quick, but I'm sure Fiend can correct me or something. The battery died and then turned back on. Yeah, no. It got wet and dried out. No. That's not... Dude, those old, iPhone 6, iPhone 5, that shit was dead as a doornail if it even looked at water. I know my wife killed many of them. Because we have kids and bathtubs and, and cats. Cats like to knock stuff off in the sinks. And so... and you know, you'd put it in rice, you know, or whatever, and it just it didn't work. It drying out at frigid temperatures overnight, you know, within 12-hour time. I just don't buy it.
Yeah, me neither. I don't buy it either.
They weren't IPX rated for water submersion. They, you know, it just isn't a thing. So with the new knowledge C extraction, they will be able to get exact happenstances with the phone. Every time the screen lit up, every time somebody opened it, every time the gyroscope moved, and they were doing that with the health app as well. So there were steps, and then it stopped walking. It'll be interesting to see how many steps were taken, where it stopped walking. It seems to me that the defense,
if the phone is off, let's say turn off, the steps are gonna be counted anywhere or anyway
no,
or no? No, right? Okay, continue.
yeah, it could have been just shut off.
Yeah,
To me, it seemed like recently the defense is pointing towards an abduction, like they were actually taken somewhere. And you know what? I've been out there and tromped all over those woods. And back in when I started going out there in 2019, the route through the woods from the north end of the bridge around down onto Ron Logan's property wasn't as pronounced as it is these days, but it was still an obvious trail searchers would have taken, even at night. It was night by the time searchers got out there, because dark sunset was like at 5:20 or something like that day. It's just fascinating to me. They had the thermal drone flying out there. It didn't catch anything. And when there's in February, there's no foliage. You can see very clearly.
but it wouldn't be any interference for the drone to catch the heat of the bodies, let's say.
Just trees, but they were only 50 feet from the edge of the water. It should have seen their heat signature. Now, I thought it was possible before that they could have been killed elsewhere, but it sounds like from the blood expert that they were killed where they were found. So if they were taken somewhere else and then brought back to that spot, or maybe they were headed down from the cemetery or back from, I don't know. It could be they just crossed the water and were murdered right there, and it was over by 3:30. But it's so weird. We don't really know. I think we're missing a large part of what happened in this crime.
Yeah, I agree. And when we see the video where the searchers are crossing the river, the day of the disappearance, let's say, they're crossing the creek not in an easy way. There's like a line of searchers crossing the creek or the river, and they are trying professional people to do that, and they're having a hard time to do it. It's not easy to cross that creek at that time of the year.
Right.
It was also almost like a river. So I imagine the killer crossing with two girls. Hard to me to accept that.
Especially
it's a possibility, but it's really...
Especially such a short, tiny guy.
Exactly.
The girls were athletes. They're about his height. I mean, he was in his 40s, and 5'4". It wouldn't be easy for sure. And those embankments are very steep and taller than he is, actually. I want to address something. Fiend says sunset was at 6:18 p.m. Are you taking into account the time changes? I understand that, like, whether it was 618 or 520 or 620, but we change our times every 6 months. So whatever, that could account for why that is anyway.
So let's say if that is unlikely that the killer crossed the creek with the girls, what would be the other alternative possibility? Let's say
Taking them
according to you.
across. Well, honestly, going down to the private drive with a car waiting would be the absolute easiest. They would still go down the hill, car right there, and then to I don't know where, or going down the hill and then walking the private drive back up. So there's been this thing about outbuildings at the Webbers, and I do believe that is true, that there is either blood in one of them. They found some type of evidence on the Webbers property. So, like, where does that fit in the timeline?
Yeah, interesting. There's a comment here from Jinx talking about the blood spatter expert, Patrick Cicero. And I want to take advantage of this comment to show a video. It's 2 minutes. It's going to help us to develop the conversation about this subject. If you agree with that, HCC is going to take just 2 minutes here.
Go for it.
Okay.
Stop it right there.
I sent you changes during the.
Yeah, I mean, I have no reason to distrust the blood expert that the prosecution brought. I mean, if there's blood on the, soaked into the back of Abby, and she had to be killed right there, and the pools of blood that they found around the crime scene, and then drug, if she was, this is uncomfortable, and I'm sorry, but if she was drug, my friend Ivy Rose was the one who, came up with this idea, just to make sure she gets her credit. But say you're drugged like this, your head's gonna fall back, if you're lifted up a certain amount. So the blood going down from like chin to forehead definitely makes sense.
Yeah. But during this pre-trial hearings, that was only the statement from Cicero, or he presented some videotaped evidence of the experiments, or is just his words, let's say?
No,
because, it's important to know how. Yeah. I know that he may be respected, right? But if we don't know how he conducted those experiments,
he didn't record his experiments either. Yeah.
So to me, that's a little bit of an issue here.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll have to recreate them and record them to really be effective, I feel. But I think mainly most pro Alan is guilty people want, the part where he talks about making the marks on the tree or whatever. It's a lot of blood. So if she was grabbing
about like 3 liters of blood that were lost per girl.
Yeah.
I think so.
To make the marks on the tree, it's feasible. It doesn't have to be an Ansu's or whatever the new one they said was.
Yeah. What do you think about multiple perpetrators or just one killer? What's your feeling about it?
I think it could be either, honestly. It's not that hard to move large limbs, dragging them. I could see control over, control with the gun is effective. It's always fascinated me what Burston said about, not being able to see. You can only see what's in the frame of the camera, not what's around it. Like law enforcement definitely has not been able to come to agreement about whether it was one or multiple. We now know that they tried really, really hard to tie the Kleins to this crime and could not.
And do you think that the subject, the client, is over, or there's still something there? Yeah.
So the Kleins didn't seem to, this is just my opinion, but I never thought the Kleins could be involved.
Why?
Kegan is a slovenly, lazy person, to an extreme. And I just couldn't see him doing this. And, when the red truck stuff came out and Tony, and I guess a lot of it comes down to me walking up and down those hills and that terrain, I just couldn't see either of them being able to do that effectively, going through the creek, and it's just a lot.
But Kegan is lazy, I agree. But he could be lazy at the truck, just waiting for his dad going out there. So he didn't have to do, let's say he was involved just for the sake of the conversation. He didn't have to make a big effort to be like a participant of the crime if he was just driving the red Jeep. His father was a hunter, so he was used to go to the forest and to hunt deers, etc. So the fact that Kegan was lazy, to me, is not you know what I mean?
The logic of the Kleins being involved is very sound. I used to argue with the captain about this nearly every day.
Yeah,
because it would answer a lot of things. It made a lot of sense that the Kleins could have been involved. My instincts just told me, there he is. Speak of the devil. Speak of the hat man. My instincts told me they had no involvement, and I can't explain it necessarily, but people who thought they could be, look, law enforcement spent, at least $1 million following up on this stuff. They spent a lot of time and a lot of effort. They truly believed that the Kleins were involved. So there's nothing wrong with thinking they were. It was the best lead for a long time.
Yeah, there's still some. Hello, Captain, by the way. Nice to see you here, man. I think there's still some contradictory information about the Kleins, everywhere else in this case. But during the 3 days pre-hearing, it was stated, or it was told, that the Kleins, both of them, they were likely at the residence on the 13th, right?
Because their devices were being used throughout the day and never left. Yeah.
Exactly. There was some kind of activity consistent with the Kleins or with some people operating the devices, let's say. But then we go to the transcripts, the interrogation of Kegan Klein.
Right.
And I remember that at one point it was said that Kegan was at the Travis Trexler residence looking at CSAM on his phone. So there's a contradiction here. Was he at his residence in Peru, or he was at, I don't remember the other location.
Yeah.
I think it's Canal Street or something like that.
I think some of these things can be answered with knowing that in an interrogation, law enforcement will lie their ass off to get an admission of guilt, to open up more questioning, to get some kind of answers and things.
Mhm.
And so, like, why, he was like, why did you Google this or that? And Kagan's like, I don't know. I don't remember that. And it's like, he could have been straight up lying because, look, cops lie every single day, all day, as their job. It is their job to lie to people, to get people to confess, and to, like, I know people don't want to hear this, but it is, cops will literally tell you this because that is what they do. There was a show called The Mole, and the second season came out recently, and it's a good show. It's fun to watch. But the cop was like, look, I lied every single day of my career as a police officer, so this was a cakewalk.
The
And I
mole.
was like, God damn it. He just said, sorry, excuse my French. But I was like, yes. Yeah, thank you for being honest.
He was lying. Maybe.
Yeah. So
Okay, so that's your opinion about the Kleins. What about Logan?
I forever thought it was the most ridiculous idea that Ron Logan could have been involved. And I'm like, oh, he's too old. But then I went and really took a look at it. I started to hear Ron Logan's draw in the Down the Hill, Guys Down the Hill. You can hear it. And I started watching the news clips. Ron Logan walked down to that crime scene like, it was like 10 times in the 2 days after the crime, with newscasts, like 10 different newscasters. And I compiled a bunch of them and put them on my channel, just demonstrate, this idea that Ron Logan was in too bad a shape or whatever. He was a farmer. He was out there killing goats and breeding horses, and all the work that comes along with horses and farm animals and farmland is tremendous. And so it was no problem for him to walk up and down those hills. And then he's out there like using his phone by the crime scene, and the camera crew catches him. And it, you know what I mean? Like, so some of these myths were instantly kind of debunked by just the footage that exists. And could Ron Logan be involved? Well, his phone was in the vicinity of the crime scene at around 8 and 10 p.m. when he received text messages, and text messages are special. They must, since 2013, it became law that all text messages must contain GPS data and tower data in every text message. So they are extremely, extremely accurate.
Do we know anything about this text?
What they said, I don't.
No.
I don't think anything's been in any filing about what it is.
Sometimes I think that he may be just like a witness. He saw the bodies there. Just a hypothesis I have.
Sure.
And at the time he had some issues with law enforcement because the driving under influence thing. So maybe he panicked. He didn't want to say anything. I don't know. Just an idea.
But see, I like this line of thinking, because he's like, hey, police officer, I have a bunch of fucking guns I'm not supposed to have. And I don't really, he would gladly gave up the information that he illegally owned a bunch of guns, but lied to have an alibi because he didn't want to get caught driving. Like, oh, I illegally have a ton of guns, but I don't want to get caught driving. Like, what's up with that? You know what I mean? So
I,
I
I
don't
see
know.
the point. But you still think that he may be involved, or but you are open to that, or
I am
not really?
open to it.
Yeah.
I don't know if he was bridge guy. I mean, the Lois Gibson analysis is interesting and needs to be considered, and the voice and it was his property. Why leave? Everybody's thing is like, well, why leave him on your own property? Well, because his DNA is already there and it can be written off. His DNA would be everywhere. His blood, even maybe, because the horses get stuck in the fence. Blah blah blah. He'd come up with a million answers. Do I think he did it? I don't know. I don't know. But there are weird things that need answers.
Yeah, I agree. And now that you talk about DNA, what's the actual information, if you know about that? There's no DNA at all, or there's just not useful DNA?
So Holman testified in court under oath that there was no DNA tying Richard Allen to the crime. But when they had Paul Holes come, he said they have a long road ahead of them. And then you have Riley, who straight up said they have DNA, and I think Carter said they have DNA. So it's probably mixed. I'm assuming this crime is a first time for the offender, or I don't know. We don't know, but they haven't been able to find a matching MO or signature, right? But a lot of knives are very slippery with blood, and so that's why knives they used in World War II and things had hilts and blood channels, or the trench knives were brass knuckles with a knife on them coming out the so they could maintain grips on them. So could be cut himself in the process, although apparently the cuts to the neck weren't. I don't even know how to explain this, but it's almost like they couldn't have. It wouldn't necessarily have even been a struggle to do them for him. Like, it seems like there wasn't a struggle to cut their necks, which is super strange to me. But even so, people were during search, they were urinating and flicking their cigarette butts and spitting out in the wood. They're out in the woods. They thought they were just looking for two missing girls, not deceased. So
yeah, they were contaminating a little bit the scene.
Yeah.
There was some kind of contamination.
So it's feasible they have DNA and they just can't get enough markers.
Okay.
Did they swab the bodies for spit? Did they swab the rope? Did they swab the belt? Did they swab, what about the clothing? Like, we have no idea what they have. So, or did.
Yeah. So we talk about the Kleins, about Logan. What about Holder? What do you think about that?
So there would be enough time for him to stop by the bridge for like 2 minutes. If his alibis really are him, but they never checked the cameras to totally confirm. They just emailed his former job and emailed the gem. This is from like 2014, I guess.
2012, I think.
2012. Okay. So like, I tried to do reverse image searches with this and could find nothing. So this is an original image using 10i and Google Images, and it comes back with nothing. So
I see similarities. I know a lot of people, they say there's nothing similar to the actual crime scene, but to me, similarities are there. There's a forest, there are two bodies, there's a tree. I know it's not, maybe not a branch or a real configuration, but to me, there's a clear similarity. I don't know, what do you think about that?
yeah,
Sometimes people try
evolution
to fit their narratives with, so to be right, you don't have to say things that makes no sense. No,
Right.
It's similar. There are similarities here. I don't know, what do you think about this?
Absolutely. And the evolution of people want it to match, exactly before they'll consider it, because they want to be right so bad that they'll ignore stuff like this. But like the evolution of a fantasy, maybe this stuck with the killer or something like this. It creeps me out. I'll give you that much. How similar it is, like sticks and dead bodies. If a tree falls in the woods,
100%.
Oof.
I usually disagree with a lot of your ideas, but I think in this one we are 100% online. No?
But I don't know. And then Elvis Fields, of course, weirds me out the most. He said he was out there. He gave her stick horns. Forget about the horns. Before we knew that they were dead, and before the public knew they had been killed, and before the public knew what bridge guy was wearing or what he looked like, Elvis Fields told his sister that he was there during the murders, spit on one of the bodies, and tried to give her a blue jacket with blood on it.
Yeah.
But they didn't, and like, why didn't that go anywhere? Why stop that? His phone was not with him. It was sitting at home untouched for 9 hours, when that had never been the case before in Elvis Fields' phone history. Like, this is not okay. Like, that guy was most likely there, or they should have followed up more with him or something. Like,
or he had some information about it,
right.
if he was not there. But yeah, to me, he knew something. I agree. And I know this picture is, I don't know, man. I don't understand how people can say that there's no similarity at all. It's just, I cannot understand. But anyways, so now let's go with Richard Allen. To me, I have to be honest, I think he's likely involved. I don't know if he was the killer or not. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts about it. I know there's a lot of, how can we say, things that are really confusing. The two sketches, the timeline doesn't fit necessarily, the time of death. I know that we can be suspicious about that, but there's also, I don't know, I think we don't, my feeling is that during these three hearing days we had like two weeks ago, we got a lot of information we didn't have before. And when the process is going to start, we are going to have too much more evidence. That, to me, my feeling is that it's not going to play well for Richard Allen. Of course, we don't know that information yet. But I don't know, what are your thoughts about that?
So I'm reading this book called Duped: Why Innocent People Confess and Why We Believe Their Confessions by Saul Kassan. And I'm going to do an episode on it here probably next week after I finish the book. But
what was the name again of the book?
It's called Duped: Why Innocent People Confess and Why We Believe Their Confessions. Here.
Okay.
I've got it on the old see if you can. It's all backwards and stuff, but
Cool.
it's like $21 on Kindle app, 25 on iBooks, and then the physical copy is like $30 or whatever. But if everyone should read it and check it out, look into it. It's fascinating. There's a systemic issue where law enforcement literally psychologically tortures people into confessions all the time. Happens all the time. And people spend years in prison all the time who did not do what they did, what they were charged with. So the confessions would only mean something to me if they contain something that the public had no idea about, or that his filings had no clues about. The autopsy pointed towards a knife with a serrated blade, not a razor knife, a box cutter, even with a serrated blade. They're going to make very different wounds regardless. So it'll be interesting to watch that in court. The bullet, many cases have been overturned due to bullet forensics in general being basically bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
And he put himself there, but his original, what he said originally was he was there 12:30 to 1:30. So on the video, was he coming or going? How good is the quality of the video? Can they really prove it? Now, do I think he's going to be convicted? Absolutely. Unfortunately, because people think this is a problem with our system and with people in general. If somebody confesses to something, but like Greeno confessed to this crime multiple times, even to law enforcement. Do any of you believe he did it though? There's a couple of you out there, I'm sure, that do, but there's a Daniel Pearson who confessed to it, but actually that was Greeno having him say he did to make content anyway. And he later was like, yeah, you made me say that, bro. And then he cut the stream. It was super weird. But look, it's people confess to this crime. Elvis, confessed to being there, but a lot of nobody believes he was involved even.
Keegan.
Yeah. Keegan Klein. Yeah. Confessed that he and his father went out there and they spent $1 million to search that river and it yielded zero. And it was all, according to law enforcement, lies and the state.
And talking about the confessions, your point, because one of the points is that allegedly he confessed some details that only the killer would know. But if we go to the interrogation with Jerry Holman, he was feeding information to Richard Allen. Was saying, we have the round, the unspent round, and we know that that round was like 6 inches from the foot of the girl. So he's feeding information to him. So I don't know. It's
yeah. He said, "I know you're guilty of something, and I'm going to prove it." It's like,
exactly.
what the fuck?
No, that is okay. It's his job, let's say. But giving information like we have the bullet, we know that it was found 6 inches from the body. So it's something that only the killer would know. Now he knows because the police is telling him that information. So
well, and the box cutter, but the pathologist did not come up with it being a box cutter, but they're trying to retrofit that to make him look more guilty. And he didn't molest the girls. There was no sign of it anyway. And he didn't shoot them in the back. So the confessions we know about are all untrue. Yeah. But, if there were 61 of them, let's see them all. What does it even mean?
And this is even worse because when you are guilty, you confess just one time. You go to your family and you say, I did this. If you are guilty, But when you have 61 confessions, it's like he was really crazy at the time. He was psychotic, let's say.
He was in a psychotic state for 2 months, like diagnosed, legitimate. You know, and I'm reading about this stuff. There was in New York, at Central Park, there was a murder, and these 5 teenage black kids gave details and said they did it and participated and they were sorry, and it wasn't them at all. It wasn't any of them.
Yeah.
And they were later able to prove it definitively through DNA.
Yeah, totally. Do we know something about the whereabouts of Richard Allen before and after the event? I know that he was at his mom's house before
Yeah,
the time.
Hennessy said that. So he drove home from his mom's and was like, I'm going to go murder 2 girls. Coming from his mom's house. I've never been that upset with my mom. I've driven home upset from my mom, but not like, that's weird. That's Ed Kemper level weird. And I guess that's the argument. But
what argument?
Now, after, I don't know any details. Rick Snay had spoken with Rick Allen's wife, and he was in bed with her that night. So something that would change my mind significantly would be the geolocation data of Richard Allen's phone. Was it off during the time of the murders? That would be suspicious as fuck to me. Was it on and somewhere else? Did he leave it? You know, if it shows he got there at the time he said he did and left at 1:30 or whatever, then yeah.
You know, when you said that you are not like mad enough to your mom to go out and to kill someone, in the same sense, let's say there was some argument between Allen and his mom, and he was mad, let's say, and he just said, I need to have a drink or something like that. We know that he had like alcohol problems. I'm stretching this idea, but I'm gonna explain you why. Let's say he went to the bridge to drink something, to release some pressure or something. He got drunk, and that situation caused the death of the girls. I'm thinking about that because in Colombia, I'm from Colombia, there's the worst children murderer ever. His name is Luis Garavito. He killed 400 children. And the police knew that there was a serial killer there because they found a bottle of alcohol, the same brand, almost every time at the crime scene locations. So the thing is that when he got drunk, he turned into another person, you know, and that was a trigger to commit the murders. So let's say that one of the confessions is that I was drinking whiskey there, Jack Daniels. And the police or law enforcement, they found a Jack Daniels bottle next to the crime scene. Something that only the killer would know. Something in that sense, you know. Just a thought.
I think that's. I love talking about this because the public has talked about so much stuff that ended up becoming true over the years that a local would hear tons of these rumors originally, like the F on the tree, their throats, you know, all that kind of stuff. So what exactly would be something only the killer would know? And to me, it would be the process, like why cross the creek? How did you slide down that hill? Because it's intense. Where did you go? And if he said, if he was able to give crime flow, because literally no one knows the actual crime flow, not even law enforcement. They don't know when the blood showed up on the Weber's property, they don't even know when the girls were actually killed. And you factor in the screams at 2 a.m., you factor in all this stuff. If he could give specifics to the flow of the crime, that you could later look back and say, oh, that makes sense, that'd be game over. That's a confession that would have more weight. Now, as I'm reading this book, people believe confessions all the time. Literally, investigators, they see the movies and it's true. All they want is a confession, because it's all, like, you can just confess to a crime and they will literally ignore like all the evidence that says otherwise. And because they want to close cases. Closed cases get you promotions, get you pay raises. Closed cases goes into the numbers. So like Indiana is a 40%, 47%, 48% closed case murder investigation success. Literally, you can flip a coin and have a better chance than getting your murder case solved. So it's super important for Indiana to just close cases. Close it. And all they have to do is find a good suspect, get them to admit guilt, and then turn the blinders on. And that's all they have to do. It is a systemic problem. And I'm glad, there's people out here who just inherently trust law enforcement and inherently trust the system. And this case is the first time that's ever really opened their eyes to how law works, how court works. It's not about the truth. The court, you will never find out the truth from a court case. Both sides of the court case are going to filter it in a way to fit their narrative, to prove guilt or innocence, to put doubt in jurors' minds, or ensure that they're the person. And it's a ridiculous, it's the best system we've got, but it's nuts.
Yeah, no, 100%. So a comment here. Could you be drunk on that bridge though? Well, maybe that's why he was walking like that.
I couldn't even be sober on that bridge, bro.
No, me neither.
I never crossed it.
Scared of heights, man. It's incredible.
When they renovated it, I finally was able to walk across. It has handrails and planking.
But you were there with your drone, no?
With my what?
Your drone.
Oh yeah, I have a gun everywhere I go. I'm an Indiana boy. We at 13, my friends and I would go out with dad's guns and shit and be shooting during summer, when summer vacation or whatever. And we'd go hunting squirrel and rabbit and deer and like by ourselves in woods, just walking over. And so it's just the nature of being an Indiana farm boy. You always have a gun on you. And so it's not that odd that Richard Allen always had a gun. And then I carry, I carry like a little, it's called a CEO knife. Because you just open your packages and clean your fingernails. But like, it's not abnormal to see people with guns and like full size, knives hanging off their belts and shit like that in Indiana. It's very, very normal, especially smaller towns and even bigger towns. But Allen isn't an Indiana farm boy, but he lives in Delphi. That's an Indiana farm boy. Delphi is not some big city. It's a very remote, tiny town. they have a Dollar General and like a grocery store. It's in the middle of a few a couple of highways, so it gets a little more traction, or gets a little more people through there, but really people who live there is very few.
Yeah.
So
And thinking about the motive, sexual motivation, or what do you think about that?
yeah, I
Yeah.
I think it was absolutely offenders in sexual homicide. It doesn't, like, the act of using a knife is a sexual act for a lot of killers. They don't have to actually do any sexual things. Like, they use it as part of their fantasy for later.
Yeah, I got your point. One thing it bothers me is I, I think Richard Allen is involved. That's just my opinion. But I don't think he's the only one here. There's a lot of coincidences around these events. Call it the Kleins, call it Logan, whatever, I don't know. But to me, there are other actors, as law enforcement said itself.
Well, it's a
And
weird coincidence that Garrett Kurtz, a serial killer, is also tied to that property.
yeah, exactly. And as you said before, it's likely Richard Allen is gonna be convicted. But after that, law enforcement, they're gonna shake hands. It's over. Thank you so much. Bye bye. They're not gonna go after the other actors.
They don't
It's
give a
finished.
shit. Yeah, they're going for the one and done, because then they can move on with their lives. They can put it on the books. It's solved. They don't have to.
A medal here.
Yeah, they'll be thanked and promoted, and
Exactly. So to me, that's not full justice, right?
now just because, it's the same thing with solving a case. If there's not sufficient evidence to close, they can't keep it open forever. I don't know. I would like to see this solved through DNA, and one day that technology will catch up, and then it'll be proven, maybe beyond the shadow of a doubt, regardless, one way or the other.
I think also that a lot of answers are gonna come from the cell phone data analysis.
Yes.
At one time, at what time the cell phone was manipulated, shut off, turned on. What was the movement of that cell phone after it was turned on? Something like that. I don't know. It's an information that is going to provide answers, in my opinion.
The cell phones, and what about those 3 cell phones that were at the crime scene during the time of the murders? The geolocation data puts them there. What ruled them out as opposed to Richard Allen? Seeing all that is going to be very interesting and very eye-opening.
And even the data analysis of the Richard Allen's phone as well.
That's the most important to me, honestly. In influencing my my personal opinion of guilt or innocence, his phone data will be the most imperative.
You were the one who was with the captain on the bridge doing like an estimation of the height of a bridge guy, right?
Yes.
And what was the result of that estimation at the time? Remember that?
Yeah, captain thought he was 5'10" to 6 foot. He lined it up. I used the Pythagorean theorem early on, and triangles, and the bridge is those cross beams are exactly 10 feet long. I came up with 5'3", and everybody's like, "Oh, your math is wrong. This is bullshit. There's camera parallax and all this stuff." And I was like, "All right, whatever." And then here we are, years later, and it's like, "Oh, he's 5'4", and I was like, "Okay, sure." So I don't, I don't know.
Funny. Yeah,
I think it causes a lot of problems. Surely, look. Oh, you know what? We can actually use AI now. I just saw a thing on TikTok where women are using AI to check if men are telling the truth about their height online. So they stalk their Facebook pages. They grab 4 examples of photographs. They feed it into AI, and AI, using things in the surroundings and known heights and whatnot, can then determine the actual height of the person within an inch. And so leave it to thirsty girls to help us solve this problem. I'll go do that.
Yeah, man. No, I think you were the only one having that estimation. Everybody was talking about a tall guy
Yeah.
at the time, and now we have, yeah, as you said, 5.4 is I don't know. It's weird because we were always thinking about a tall guy, you know.
Well,
Now,
and then also age. Some people see, back then when we had no suspects, really, some people would see a young guy or an old guy. We had the 2 sketches when those came out, when the second one came out. What's up with all that weirdness? They literally told us the old sketch has been cleared and the new sketch is the suspect. And then when Richard Allen's caught, we have Doug Carter like, "Oh, they're the same person." It's like, what is happening?
no, that's
But
blows my mind.
It's the same thing that happens in our community. The cops have their own personal opinions, and eventually they gave it over to prosecution. The prosecution has their job to convict, and so that's what we're getting it filtered through. The different officers that were in unified command and other parts of the investigation, they all had their own opinions, just as we do. And so their opinions and theories, it matters. It's important. Most of those people had all the evidence, and even they couldn't come to a consensus based on what they had. Now, has new stuff come forward? Is there new stuff? Of course. We know that because as new stuff comes out, the defense has to get it and unfortunately request it instead of getting it like they should. But yeah.
Yeah, I know if you have two different witnesses observing one person, that they're gonna despite a person with some difference between both statements. But to say
Absolutely.
that one of them is gonna describe the OBG, and the other one the young British guy,
20-year-old guy.
They're fucking different. They are 2 different persons, and now saying that the killer is a combination of both sketches, that's bullshit in my opinion. I don't buy it, man.
I think there was a younger looking man on the bridge. There's no way of mistaking Richard Allen for a 20-year-old with brown curly hair. Richard Allen may have been the guy with the baklava or whatever, maybe, but an older man with creepy eyes and then who Betsy Blair saw are 2 different people, I think.
Yeah, me too. 100%, man.
Where'd the red hair thing come from?
Yeah, exactly.
It's all strange. Not blue eyes, but Richard Allen clearly has blue eyes.
Exactly. And the Sergeant Riley, he said on the news that according to the witness, the British guy, he doesn't have blue eyes. So
Right.
There's a lot of contradictory statements here.
Well, and they couldn't even get the hat right. Like,
exactly.
witnesses couldn't remember the hat well enough. One of them said a painter's hat with a shorter brim. One of them said, with the ear flaps. They didn't know. So
Yeah, I thought.
it's going to be an interesting trial, and I wish they would air it so that we can all watch together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. In conclusion, you think, what's your opinion about Allen? Because we talked about him, but I don't know yet what's your opinion. Do you think he's involved potentially, or you don't know, or what was your opinion?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I think it's entirely possible he's innocent and being railroaded, and I also think it's entirely possible he did it. I just simply don't know. There's not enough evidence that I know from reading all of the documents, from talking to locals over the years, from blah 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 blah. Same thing we all do, right? There's just not enough to convince me completely that he did it. His wife and mother are there supporting him. Like, they don't think he did it. And we know that when he confessed to his wife is like, I don't believe you.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Let's wait for more information to be able to have some kind of conclusion, let's say.
It'll be nice. Yeah, and I'm willing, if we find out certain things during the trial, and it could very well become clear that he was the killer. And then,
yeah.
But it's not clear right now.
Yeah, I agree. What's coming in your channel? What's your idea? You're gonna be making like a couple of videos, one every week, or what's your routine? Let's say.
I make videos randomly when I feel like it.
Yeah.
When I feel like I can add to the conversation. I never, other than a couple of times where I just retaliated against people being complete shitheads to me.
Venting.
Yeah. I never strike first, but if people just mess with me over and over, I'm gonna respond.
Yeah, for sure.
So many people are just absolutely batshit crazy around this case, and horrible people that think they're like saints or something.
Exactly.
No, I'm gonna do a show probably within the next week about this book, and talking about some studies on it, the Innocence Project and stuff like that. I don't want to just make videos. It's like when you make a video, you have a good reason. You're throwing around ideas. You want to come on and talk with your audience. You want to bounce ideas off of the community. And I love that, and I appreciate that. And it's valuable to the community.
Yeah, 100%. I love the videos you make with the captain, man. You too. You have a great.
He deleted them. They were so good. They were so good.
Why?
I don't know. He has standards or something. I don't know. And I'm a wild card, so
I like it because you are like in the opposite spectrum of ideas, but the conversation is so cool, man. I really love it. You can make something in the future is gonna be really cool for everyone here, man.
I'd like to get back. We're gonna have some kind of resolution to this case by the end of this year. At least in some way. Yeah, it could be. There's going to be people who just carry on talking about this case for eternity. But he's, you know, like for me, the trial is enough unless he's found not guilty very clearly. And do you think they would ever reopen the case and arrest somebody else and have a trial for them?
No way.
Yeah.
No way. Yeah, man. I'm gonna end the live here. I really appreciate you being here, man. It was so cool, and I feel honored to have you here. Thank you so much, and I hope you can do something in the future again together.
Yeah. Sounds good, Cryptex. Have a good day, man. Thank you.
You too. Thank you so much. See you guys. Thank you for being here, and stay in touch.